Hey, it's Dave. Welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to talk about breaking the code. And I use that term because it's basically like now applying the music theory that we've been talking about. And I went back and I watched a couple of the videos and I was like, how the hell is anybody following this? I mean, I can follow it, but it's like it seemed a little advanced. And then I figured you could go back and watch it a couple of times. But I'm going to break some of the stuff down a little easier today and go back of things on the first video. And the first thing I hear myself saying a lot is I'm talking about the 5 chord and I'm calling it the dominant. And people might be like, what the hell is he talking about? So in every key, no matter what the key is, we can just get rid of it and use the number system because the keys don't matter. The first chord is always a major chord or a major 7th chord, depending on how much extensions you add to the chord. It could be a major 9, major 11. The 5 chord of every scale is always going to be a major that's a dominant chord. And that means that the 7th tone in that chord is a whole step from its root. As opposed to a major 7th where the 7th tone is a half step from the root. So if we look at like a C major 7, we see it's C, E, G, and B. If you looked at a C dominant 7 or a C7, it's C, E, G, B flat. And the B flat is a whole step from C. Well, that happens only in the 5th position. And when I say only, every rule is meant to be broken, and there's going to be altering of scales. And when you start getting more involved in jazz, and even some classical minor stuff where it's harmonic minor, there's altering of chords, and therefore the rules are not steadfast. There's different rules. This is the rules for basically 90% of what's out there. So the 5 is going to be the dominant. There are times in songs when people change chords to a dominant chord because they want you to feel like it's the 5 rolling back into the 1, but the chord they're leading you to is not the 1. And that's somewhat of a trick, a manipulation, and sonically it sounds nice. But when I say we're going to break the code today, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look. And we could look at a song like Sarah Smile. Sarah Smile, in the hook of the song, and also the intro that the solo is played over, it's D minor, A minor, G minor. Now, they're all 7s. It doesn't matter if they're 7s. D minor 7, A minor 7, G minor 7. It's D minor, A minor, G minor. What does that tell you about the key signature? Well, we learned in the first one that the 2, 3, and 6 are minors.
Minors, not minors.
You lost me.
And so therefore, if A minor and G minor are next to each other, they're the 2 minors next to each other, separated by a whole step, then they would have to be 2 and 3 of the scale, which would make the D minor the 6, which would make the key F. To do that, all you have to do is write down G minor, A minor, and then a little bit up the page, put D minor, and write 2, 3, and 6 over them, and then fill in the blanks, and you'll come to the conclusion that you're in the key of F. Now, you could also look at it as the relative minor of D minor. That's fine, but it's the same key. So when you look at the chords to the song, and this song does have a rule breaker in it because there's some jazz implications and there's some stuff that they wanted to do. So when you go to in the verse, it's a D minor 7 to a C6. Now you'll see it written out on page like it's an A minor over a C. It's the same thing as a C6 to a B flat major 7. And then the interesting part is now they're going to come down to the A, and with the A they play an A11. Well, actually there's 2 different things going on. The guitar's playing an A11 to an A major. The keys sound like it's playing an A sus4 to an A, which all those chords fit in. It's just there's some nice tie-ins there. The A sus4 being A, D, E. The A11 being A, G, B, D, E. So you have a lot of the same extra notes in there anyways. But the reason why it goes to that A11 or to the A is because it's trying to tell you that that's the 5. And it wants you to resolve back to the 1, which in the case of a 5 would be the D. And so it's bringing you back to D minor naturally. And then it does the same, it repeats that, and then gets back to, you know, the walk up of the beat. I mean, I'll do a whole thing about the lesson if you want to learn Sarah Smile. It's not really what I'm trying to get at here. What I'm trying to get at is you could take apart any song and you could see where the chords fall. So in a song, like if you took a song like Dreams by Fleetwood Mac, the chords go F to G, F to G. Well, if we look at our chart, or if you have it in your head, you could see that F and G are 2 major chords next to each other, so they must be 4 and 5. Because the only times major chords are next to each other is 4 and 5. And if they are 4 and 5, then the 1 is C, and the song is in the key of C major, which it is. So that's like how you can break the code. And now you might think I'm nuts because when I was a teenager, I would hear a song when I first got my license in the car and I would know the chords and I would try to work out what key the song was in. Of course, a lot of times it's the first chord in the song and then a lot of times it's not. So it was a lot of fun when it wasn't, when there was actually some digging to do. So, you know, but if you're listening back then to like Judas Priest or Iron Maiden, it's pretty basic. You're playing on the 6 all the time, you know. They're playing everything in minor. But for the most part, if you were to break out and listen to other bands, the Fleetwood Mac being one with Lindsey Buckingham's great guitar playing, there's just a lot of different stuff out there that you could try to figure out what these keys were. And it's a great exercise. Of course, then you're going to run into stuff like where keys are changing and there are rules being changed, and that's good. That's a good exercise, and it's also good for you to hear that. And you can hear that in certain songs. You know, like you could take a song like by the Bee Gees, which, like something like How Deep Is Your Love, that's in E flat. I think How Deep Is Your Love's in E flat. I play it in an acoustic duo. We do it in the key of D. And so let's just take a look at the key of D because that's so we're used to how I'm thinking of the song. So when I think of that song, it's in the key of D, except it goes to a C9, and it adds that tension, and it's nice. And there's a sound that has when you play the whole step below the root of a key in that 9. And then he does plays on that a lot. He'll play the 9 with the G in the root, basically making it like, I believe, a G minor 6. Some real cool stuff. Now, and I hope I'm not jumping too far ahead. You should be writing a lot of that down, but basically to break the code, you should know if 2, 3, and 6 are the minors in a key, then if 2 minors are next to each other, they're probably 2 and 3. If there are 2 majors next to each other, they're probably 4 and 5. Another trick is always to know that the 5 chord is dominant. Now, if you take a look at the song Sarah Smile one more time, getting back to that, we would have solo over the verse, because the soloing over the chorus, where he plays that lead, it just stays in D minor. There is a blue chord. There's a D flat 9 right before. On every other, when it starts to go into a heavy rotation, it's every other one. It goes to the D flat 9 right before the D minor. But when we get to the verses, if we're playing some type of lead, or let's say we're jazzing it and playing some type of, you know, getting a little fancy over that verse, so we have the D minor, we have the C6, we have the B flat major 7, and we're all still in the key of D minor. Now we get to that A7 or A11. Now I call an A11 and A7 in this particular because I'm just trying to show you that it's a 7. So any variance of a 7 is a dominant. So A7 is a dominant chord. A9 is a dominant chord. A11 is a dominant chord. A13 is a dominant chord. And so you should know that those chords, they're all dominants because they all have that dominant 7. The dominant just relates to that 7 in the chord is a whole step from the root. So where you play that A7, you can now switch. You can, or you cannot. You can play the regular D minor, and that C natural will come across that A7 as a sharp 9, and it works. You can play a C sharp and a C natural, which would be the major third in the sharp 9. And I'm just talking about singular notes. Or you can look at it like you can play D harmonic minor, which would then add the C sharp into the scale. You can play, I mean, there's so many things you can play. You can play the altered scale, which would be, you could play B flat harmonic, you could play B flat melodic minor. Now the B flat melodic minor scale in the 7th degree, starting on the A, is considered the altered scale. It's great for causing tensions to get back to that 1, and that's a nice little touch. So you could do that there. There's a lot you can do over a 7 chord. There's a lot you can do over the 5 chord when it's that dominant, when that dominant 7th's in there, because now you can start building tensions on it, and it always sounds good. You know, and against the dominant 7 chord, there are no mistakes. There are just tensions. So that's what I would say about that. But I wanted to get back to you to let you think about that for a minute and think about how you can piece together these songs. So come up with like a list of songs for yourself that you wanted to learn with your band or whatever you're working on, and write them down. Write down the key you think they're in, and then go do the work and come back. And you can even message me. You can email me to my email. It's dave44levine@outlook.com. And I'll email you back and tell you, hey, you're on the right track or you're not. It's a lot of fun to do. It starts to become like an exercise for you to learn how the keys fit in. And you'll start to understand music a hell of a lot more. And then you'll start to recognize when you hear songs on the radio, it's like when something goes out, you'll even know, oh, that's that 9 chord before the root. I get it. That's that dominant 9, a whole step before the root that's out of key. That's a nice sound. So there are tricks you start to hear, and what happens is you start to realize that songwriters who find that will start to use it in a lot of songs. And to paraphrase Frank Zappa, not to quote him, I don't know the quote exactly, but he was along the lines, if you use something and you come up with something great in one song, why not use it in 100 songs? He had no problem with that. He thought it was a great idea. And a lot of times, even if it's just falls on a different beat in the groove, it won't sound the same. And that's another cool technique when you're practicing your scales, is to practice a scale started on 1. Then play the background track, if you're working to 1, and start the riff on 2, and you'll see how different the same lick sounds just by starting it on 2. Then maybe 2 and, or start on 3, or 3 and. You'll start to feel like, you'll start to recognize that you can milk a lot out of the same thing over and over again. And then when you start looking at like some of the greats, you'll see that they did the same thing. And thankfully so, because it's fantastic. You know, the other day we were listening to, I had a student here, we were working on some Doors stuff. And, you know, the Doors are great. They're a band that I don't care to listen to ever again. I lived in Venice for 20 years. It's, there's the Jim Morrison mural on the wall there. The Blue Bus was not calling me. But whatever. Maybe it was just a little overplayed for me and whatnot, but they are a great band. When I go back and I have to listen to what they were doing, I'm like, it's ultra clever stuff. And Robby Krieger was very interesting, but he played a lot of the same things over and over again. But it's interesting in the application that when Ray Manzarek is playing something a little different against it, how different Robby Krieger stuff sounds. But a lot of the stuff for Robby plays, I think, sounds like he's a jazzy blues guitar player, in my opinion. You know, you can listen to like Love Me Two Times, and you can hear like a lot of the old you can hear a lot of those fills in there, and he's playing against Ray Manzarek. And then I watched a couple of live ones, and he's throwing in actual where a a lot of his riffs were derived from. He's playing the actual songs kind of in there, and it's just very cool. Anyways, this is a short one today. Just want to let you know that when we're going to crack the code, we're going to break it, and this is how you're going to do it. You're going to look at songs. When you see two minors next to each other, I want you to assume they're 2 and 3. When you see two majors next to each other, that's 4 and 5. That's the steadfast rule. Rules can be broken. Don't get your panties in a bunch if all of a sudden you find out that something's changed or something's been altered in it, because that's what happens. That's really all I wanted to talk about today. I'd hope you guys take some time and you work on that. You can reach out to me if you'd like. And I appreciate all the followers, all the great compliments. I appreciate somebody comes in and they thumbs down me right away. I get a biggest kick out of that. I love it. I hope they do that because they're upset about my Tonewood video and that they're bothered now for the rest of their life about it. Like, I must unlike everything this guy does, which I love. In the case of hitting thumbs down on me, you can basically treat me as the main character in the book The Stranger, where on the way to my hanging, I hope a hell of a lot of people show up and cheer my death, as long as you're watching it. Anyways, till then, very good.
Now, wait a minute, let me get this straight. Twice came in and shot the teller and Jim fell.
No, he only shot the teller, Jim Johnson. Fell is ill.
Okay, then after he shot the teller, you shot twice.
No, I only shot once.
Twice is the hold-up man.
Then I guess I did shoot twice.
Well, so now you're changing your story.
You're right on target. You're right on the money. Everything you said. You hit the nail right on the head with your comments, what you're saying today. You're 150% correct.